My name is Cheryl Turnquist, and it's interesting when you said I toggle back and forth between @Prov Pilates and @Cheryl Turnquist, and I don't even pay attention to which one I was on. So my name is Cheryl Turnquist. I own Providence Pilates Center, which is here in Providence, Rhode Island. I've been teaching. This October will be my 20th year having a studio. I've been teaching since 1999, so I've been teaching over 20 years. And I just love Pilates, and I loved your lead-in because when I first started, I really felt kind of guilty about this being my career choice because it felt like I was playing and just having fun all the time.
Yes.
And like, you know, I grew up where like you're not really supposed to get paid to have fun, you know what I mean? Yeah. And while my career before that I loved what I did, it was work, it was a job, it wasn't like this. So I could totally speak into that for a long time.
Well, let's run with that because I mean, who was it last week?
Erin.
Was it
on Friday? I think the morning.
Yes, I think so. We're talking about the passion for doing what we do and having fun doing it. Yes, it was.
I think so.
Yeah, because like we feel there's a sense of guilt and there's a sense of not. It almost like we're not allowed to just have fun and not really work a day of our lives, so to speak.
Right. Or it becomes also what you do like for your fun. So then people think, well, you're working all the time, but it's like, well, it's fun. Like, I like what I do. I don't know how to say it. Like, I can't imagine doing something related to Pilates every single day.
Right.
Whether it's a workout or teaching or studying or watching video or whatever, you know?
Right.
So, yeah.
Did you ever have a point where your parents kind of pulled you aside and said, when are you going to get a real job, so to speak?
You know, so I had the real job first, and it was in my mid to late 20s. I always had dabbled in, I had always taught fitness. I mean, I was like the high-low Jane Fonda style, step aerobics, you know, all of that stuff. Yes. And that's how I segued into Pilates in the late 90s. There happened to be very few people here in Rhode Island. There were literally 3 teachers. And, you know, like if you scored a lesson, that was a big deal. So my friend and I got a lesson and then we just got into it. And lo and behold, because Pilates was becoming popular, that particular person needed teachers. And we were fitness instructors. So it was kind of like a natural, well, just sit and watch until you can actually, And, you know, the only training program for me was in Boston. And because I had just gotten married, like there wasn't a way I could just move to New York. That wasn't going to happen. Right. And I still needed my full-time job to support me. So we kind of like apprenticed, and then we ended up taking this program in Boston, which carried me through until 2006. But it's like, you know, this was what I needed to do. And to be honest, I was working for a nonprofit. I was a social worker. You and I have a lot more in common than I realized. I was working as a social worker for a nonprofit. So like year to year, you were based on whether the grant came through to have the job. Yes. And that was in and of itself stressful. And, you know, I feel like I was good at my job and I really liked my job and I felt very satisfied with my job. But this was so much like, I don't want to say easier, but it was easier. It felt lighter. It felt like I could make a similar amount of money if I pushed it and I worked hard. And
it was a natural amount of difference too, right?
Yeah. And you know what? The other thing was the population that I worked with my social work career, like they didn't really want to come to see me. It was being forced on them type of thing. And, you know, that's also hard when you know, like you're the bad guy sometimes. And people don't necessarily want to come and see you. But here they were choosing to come and see me. They wanted to come and do Pilates and they felt amazing when they left.
So funny.
Why not do that, right? Like,
the self-esteem could only take so much, right?
Exactly. So it was a win-win for both of us. So I gradually, like, you know how you cut back hours and you add more, and you cut back more hours and you add more, until finally my boss is like, I can't cut back any more hours and have you still say you work here. So I you know, took the leap. You just said, like jumping out of a plane. And you know, I was able to get a small business loan, and I just went for it in 2001.
Wow. There you go.
So that was cool.
I remember I had this flashback. One of my clients, while I was still working in social work, and maybe my first or second client, I still do train my second client. So this must have been my first client that was handed to me. And he was a big executive business guy stuff. And he said, like, you know, how's this training thing going? Because he knew I was still doing social work. And he said, oh, it's good. You know, I got a new client. And every time his response was the exact same thing. He said, good, get one more.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm like, oh, that's good. Get one more. Okay, good. You got a client? Get one more. And it was like, after a while, I was like, okay, I get what you're saying here, right? So instead of saying I'm trying to build an empire, just get one more.
One more. Yeah.
And eventually came to that point where same thing. The person I was training that was kind of mentoring me in personal training at the time decided to go back to school. So then
Yep.
for her, like there's this crossroads where I can just inherit her whole client base, but
Yep.
that would mean I'd have to walk away from social work completely,
Right.
or I can just keep trying to balance these things out. I decided I'm just going to go for it.
Yep. Yep. And
And
that's
yeah.
actually what happened with me in terms of going into my own business. So I left, I was still doing my social work job, and lo and behold, a trainer in the area who she ended up becoming pregnant with triplets.
Okay.
And she had a very small, like one reformer, one Cadillac, one chair studio, actually in a spa salon of all places.
There you go.
And a client of mine that was a mutual friend was like, the woman ended up having to be put on bed rest unexpectedly. Like, this was critical that she had to stop working and she couldn't do this anymore for a period of time. So my client was like, Cheryl, you have to take advantage of this opportunity right now. So
Yes.
okay. So I figured it out, and I, gave my notice, and I got my loan, and I went in and I took over for this woman's business. And she ended up raising her triplets, and I think she moved to another state, but she started again with her own business. And then I grew from there and moved out of that small space to bigger and bigger and bigger. And I just kind of kept evolving. So,
Yes.
but yeah, it's like those things that happen just at the right moment, when you
Yes.
either make it or take it or don't,
Hmm.
and you have to just go that path, so.
So what was your decision-making process at that point where like your friends are saying like you have to go for it? Like how did like those are the moments I've always wanted to like, dive deep on, because you could have easily said it's not the right time, or
I
that's gonna be
could,
too
yeah.
scary. Like I mean, like it would have been easy to say no in that moment, but you said yes.
Yeah,
So
I had
why?
been 2 years into training, teaching. So I had finished like my first level of my first certification, and I had been
Hmm.
teaching for 2 years. And an easy thing for me was that the person that I was working for was a challenge to work with. I was doing it, and I was adapting, and I was getting it, but you know, there was a lot of stuff to have to deal with. And I thought, I can do this. I am capable to this. I still don't necessarily have to give up. I still had my full-time job, or my
Hmm.
part-time, at that point, part-time job. I didn't have to give that up all the way, but I was like, I can do this. I was married at the time to who's now my ex-husband, but we processed that through together, what it would look
Hmm.
like. And it was like, well, I'm just going to go for it. And if it doesn't work, I interestingly, it was in my late 20s. It was like, well, if it doesn't work, then I tried, and I still have a career to fall back on. Like, I knew that I still had a
Yes.
career to fall back on.
Hmm.
Even now, I feel like with this pandemic, there's always a need for a social worker. I have
Hmm.
let my licensure fall through, but here in Rhode Island, it's really not that hard to do what you need to do, to get
Right.
credits and to go back into that kind of a field. And
Right.
I feel like, if this was all to fall apart tomorrow, I still know that there's something I could do. So that didn't feel so scary to me.
Gotcha.
I felt confident in that respect, I guess.
Yeah, that's and I said the same thing. I could always fall back on my degree. Like even you
Yeah,
can, I mean, obviously you have to start at the bottom again, but like you can
right.
go through like the different postings and see I still qualify for that job and that job. So
Right. There's always something. And I've never been a person who's not going to work. I mean, it's probably to my fault. Like, I work too much. So,
yes,
like, that wasn't a question. I would do what I
hmm,
had to do to make it work for my family in
yep,
that respect.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Not to trivialize how courageous that is. I mean, like a lot of times, like I've had friends who started businesses when I was working in my secure jobs. I thought, oh,
Yeah.
it's so brave that you do that. Like, how are you gonna make ends meet? And they're like, oh, we just figure it out, right? So,
Yeah.
and I commend you for that. 20 years ago to be able to do that
Thanks.
and to be where you
Yeah.
are. It's like,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah. It was
people that
kind of
are.
like, whoo.
Hmm. I know when you stop and think about it, like that is kind of risky.
Yeah, yeah. And I didn't have, like you, I didn't have I don't know, maybe you did have a formal business education, but I certainly didn't. I mean, I
Nope.
was okay at math, and
Yeah.
when you go into that graduate program for social work, you're like therapy, therapy, therapy kind of thing. So, I didn't have all that other I feel like I could manage people one-on-one, but you
Yeah.
start small and you grow. And I thankfully had a really good base of clientele that wanted me to succeed. Like, they wanted to cheer
Mm.
me on, and they wanted to help me, and they wanted to make connections for me, and they wanted to set me up with somebody who could help me with this thing
Yes.
that I didn't know. So I thankfully wasn't afraid to
Hmm.
take advantage of that.
Yeah, and and Emma's making a great point here. Like for you and I, coming from another field other than being a professional dancer,
Mm.
that's usually the natural progression, right? Like the dancers had taken Pilates classes and then their career is over. It's like, well, the next logical step is to become a Pilates instructor. because it's the next logical step. It's not an internal dialogue saying, well, I have this to fall back on. There
Right,
actually isn't
right.
anything to fall back on.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting. I desperately wanted to go to music school. I was thinking about this yesterday and like
Mhm.
just thinking about this. I had played piano and I had done dance all my life, but I was like, okay, good at both, but not great. Like I wasn't going to make it in those fields.
Right.
But I desperately wanted to go to music school. I kind of figured like I'd be a music teacher. I was into theory and all of that stuff. And I'm so thankful to my parents. They knew that education was really valuable, and they were going to put me through my bachelor's degree anyway. But it was kind of clear that it was going to be in like at least a liberal arts education, and not they made it. It wasn't going to be in the arts that I
Right.
wanted to do. If I wanted to do the arts, that could come on my own time later
On
on.
your own
So
dime.
yeah, on my own dime, on my own time. So
Right.
whatever you feel when you're in high school and you're getting ready to make those decisions, you feel. But to that point, I do feel like I do have something else, and I am still doing something in movement and creativity to some degree
Yes.
that I liked so much back then that,
Mhm.
it kind of came and went in its path. But I do, I can say that I can appreciate having that again to fall back on.
Absolutely.
So,
And I say this to my kids all the time too. It's not a question of what you want to do when you grow up. It's who do you want to become, right?
right,
So if
right.
you look at it from that perspective, are those things that you're most passionate about still going to have expression today or not? So even though you didn't end up in music, you didn't end up in dance, you're still to some degree coordinating people and like whatever it is, like you find those little
Right.
elements. Like if you really dive deep on like why you want to do this, it's because of X, and now you're here, and that still gets expression somehow.
Right, right,
If
right.
you're kind of following your heart in your career path, right? So
Right. And, I'm at that point where like I can still take piano lessons if I want to. I can still,
sure.
do dance if I want to. I don't think it's ever too late to learn. I mean, if I saw a degree program that I wanted to go into, I would be the first one to be like, oh, I think I want to do that now. So
Yeah,
like, I might go back to school. I don't know.
sure, why not?
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. And at right at the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about going online and all these pivots that we have to make during this quarantine. I'm coming up on a year of doing these core conversations.
Mm,
So
that's
the
awesome.
first, I know, eh? Like it
Yeah, it's so
really
awesome. Yeah.
is. Did you catch the A in there? The Canadian A that just
Yeah,
slid
yeah.
out? Yes.
I
Um,
don't say my R's usually, so it's
no,
okay.
there you go. But so it's interesting that when we started having these conversations, the first question that came out of my mouth was, what pivots have you made since this lockdown? And I think that now we're at a place where everyone's kind of settled into those pivots
Yeah. Yeah.
to some degree,
So
right?
my immediate pivot was, oh my God, what am I going to do? I felt, I don't know if they realize it, but I felt super, super responsible for my team
Mhm.
to get through this in whatever way they could. And again, not having an HR or any of that background, I really wasn't sure what does unemployment look like? How does this work? I never really had to
Right.
research into that before. So we did our research into that so that we could provide information to the team. But for me, it was like, I am not going to go down without a really hard fight, like I am going to make this work. I don't care what it takes. So I quickly figured out, well, how do we get online? I had been here. I've been kind of preparing for this since like January. I had been following the news a lot. We had a trip planned to go to Portugal in March for family vacation fun. And we were like, oh, I don't think this is going to happen. So we'd been
Yeah.
following a lot about what was going on and kind of preparing at least a month in advance for what was going to go down. But, it's like, well, what platform can we use? Okay, we're going to go with Zoom because that's what everyone's talking about. So let's just figure it out. So we figured that out. We went with Zoom. The team of mine that did need to file for a period of time, I do that because I'm not sure how this is going to work or what it's going to look like. So let us get this under our belt. So then
Yeah.
there's a small team that sticks with me and we're like, okay, let's figure this out. We can do this. And I was overwhelmed by how appreciative the clients were to have us continue
Hmm.
online for their own sanity. As much as it was for
Yes.
my sanity and our well-being, it was for their sanity and their well-being in a different way. And then it just exploded. It grew from there. I mean, we have at this point over 60 online classes a week on our schedule with a variety of my instructors.
Wow. It's
Because,
amazing.
there are those clients that like that particular instructor, they want that particular
Sure.
class. And even if my classes don't have 15, 20 people per class, that's fine. It's satisfying the need to those customers, and that teacher is getting a class. So I feel like being open to also letting the team develop what they wanted to do that worked for them was really important. So it wasn't me dictating, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. It was like, what will work for you? And then what will work for you? And then what will work for you? And how are we going to make this work as a unit, as a whole, to keep the business going? You know, because I still had to pay rent, I still had to pay overhead, I still had to do everything that went along with that. And then I had written to you about this, is that I've chosen not to go in, A, because I like being home and it's working for me, but also because I feel responsible to let those team members that want to be in my studio. We still have to subscribe to the social distancing restrictions here in my state. And before COVID, I mean, we were like packed in, you know, I could have had 15 people. I have a big studio, but there was a lot of people and a lot going on all at once. And now it's like, okay, well, that just can't happen anyway. Even if somebody's okay with it, it can't really happen. So in order to allow team members to be there at what used to be maybe 5 or 6 of us could be there at a time, now only 3, you know, someone has to step back to let other people go in. So that was another motivation for where I'm at. And then the great, awesome thing for me is that I've got clients now from across the country and in other countries. And like, this is just amazing. I absolutely love it. So I don't want to lose them. I mean, I feel like there'll probably come a time when they're like, okay, yeah, I'm done with this. I need to go somewhere where I'm live or whatever. I don't know. But that time hasn't come yet. So it hasn't come yet for me, so it hasn't come yet for them. So we're going to kind of keep going with what we need to until at some point, maybe there's a natural attrition to that too. I don't know, but I'm, you know, riding that wave in that respect, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That is very fun. I'm loving it too. And just the connections with other teachers, like there's a great kind of professional development component that none of us really thought about.
Amazing.
We're all, you know what I mean? Like, Emmett Younger in here, like I've taken one of his classes and he sends me his classes from time to time. Brilliant. Like I wouldn't have had a chance to connect with these great movers and teachers.
Many amazing teachers. I mean, and even having conversations with someone here, you're in Toronto. Like I haven't been to Toronto physically ever. So, you know, this is huge. You know?
And we have so many friends now too, right? Like, I mean, like I started, I haven't been really good with it, but like, you know, those little pin maps, like virtual things where you just like, so I started to do that where I've met people from like through core conversations and just all over the place. And I'm looking forward to the day when that could be a road trip where I can physically just go to these locations and throw down workouts with people and just talk shop like live, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's opened up the doors to so much. I take lessons now each week with some trainers from Anelia Garcia's program in Brazil. So they're in Brazil teaching me here in my house, and I love it. I mean, I've also, as a result of this, been able to increase my own personal practice ability. I've made it a real strong point to schedule it into my schedule, and it does not change. Like it is a schedule just like a client, where when I was in studio and running around and making sure everything was the way it was supposed to be, I lost that time. I gave up that time because I had to, or I felt like I had to.
You felt like you had to, really.
I felt like I had to. And so now it's like, you know what? I am going to make that time. So probably since, I guess, June, you know, 10 months, I've been doing that. And I feel better than I've ever felt, really, by consistently doing that 3 to 4 times a week.
Yeah. And this is funny. Like, how sore were you like the first month of quarantine when you realized you're working out like 6 times a day doing virtual classes with people?
Your hips are like,
I can't do one more roll up. You'll do this one by yourself. I'll just talk you through it. Yep.
So funny. And the only downfall to that is that I'm sitting I'm sitting on my tower unit while I'm talking to my tripod. But that I feel like has changed body wise, where, you know, we used to stand 6, 7, 8, 9 hours a day teaching. Now we're sitting a little bit more. So I appreciate the work for that. And I actually went right down to beginner system again and started from scratch. Like, I want to really explore where I am now at this age, at home in a pandemic. And I want to explore from there and move up. And that's kind of the path that I took for my own personal practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how did you find Pilates? Like I try and stay away from the classical versus contemporary dialogue altogether, but just out of curiosity, like how did you find Pilates, and, you know, what courses did you take kind of growing through this process?
Sure. Yeah. So again, going back to it. So I had, oh God, go way back. Like I did gymnastics. I got just, I didn't want to do backflips on the balance beam. So I moved into dance. I did dance. I was on toe. I was on point. But then, I could go to college. I went to college for liberal arts. So that kind of all went by the wayside. And then as I was working my full-time job, I taught aerobics. I got into teaching, again, high-low, step aerobics. I could rock that step. I loved step aerobics. That was like my passion.
It's coming back
so
to
much fun.
sidebar.
It is. I can't wait because I was dancing all over that step. And then we did spin. I worked for a franchise type gym. I was their group. Yeah, it was a big box gym. I was a group fitness director for that part-time, like really part-time while I had my full-time job. And one of my instructor friends heard about this. She was up on trends and she's like, there's this Pilates. We got to try this Pilates. And there's a woman 3 miles away. We got to see if we can get in. And she did the research and it was hard to get in. Like you couldn't get in. Well, now it's like, well, what is this Pilates? Why can't we get in?
So exclusive.
So then, we got in. So we, just the fact that you couldn't get in and then you got in, of course you had to do it. And we walked out that first one. I remember we did a double and we walked out and we were like, what was that? Like that was just kind of, I don't know. But then we're like, well, we got to do it again. Okay. So we do it again. And we just kept doing it. And it took, a while to figure out like, what are we doing? I'm not sure, but I like it. I feel good. I feel great. I was in my late 20s. I had a lot of anxiety about life in general and where I was going and what I was doing and all that pressure that goes along. I would never want to be in my 20s again, but all that stuff that goes along with being in your 20s. And Pilates made me feel good, especially while I was doing it. And after, for a while, I felt like, wow. Yeah. So again, the only training center aside for me that I knew about anyway, the only thing I could do was either go and study with Romana in New York City at her training center or do what was called at the time, the Physical Mind, the Method. It was by Joan Breitbart in Wellesley, Mass. Okay. So, New York wasn't really an option, but Wellesley, Mass was. So I figured out how to make that work in my schedule and went back and forth for a year or so doing that. And that worked for me. I worked for this woman, like I said, for a while. I had lots of clients under her because she kind of stepped back. And then the opportunity came to me in 2001 to go on my own. So, okay, well, I'll do that too. So I did that. Yes. And then I kept taking lessons with whoever in the Boston area was pretty much my zone. Like, where could I go in Boston that had a teacher that was above me that I knew I could learn from? Who was the teacher there? So there were a couple. Kathy Van Patten was in right in downtown Boston. Okay. Nora Gomez Deers was in Somerville. And so I would go back and forth like once a week to a class, take a session with either of them. And at that point, they both had merged into Power Pilates, if they weren't that already, I'm not sure. So I kept Power Pilates. And so then they were teacher trainers for Power Pilates. And that was my natural segue into Power Pilates in 2006. I did their bridge program. Which finished in 2007. And I got divorced at that same time. And then in 2012, I had been with them long enough that Kathy was actually stepping out and moving to California. And I think Nora was kind of in for a while and doing other things. There was a couple people here in Massachusetts, but thankfully they needed somebody else. So I went through the process to become a teacher trainer for them in 2012. Right. And then, people come and go and do things. And so that's who I've stayed with in terms of my career certification, but in the process I've done Mijo Wiggins classical syllabus. I did the Red Thread Ranch with Kathy Ross Nash. I did Sherry Berkowitz's vertical workshop. I'm taking Anelia Garcia's virtually, and then there will be some in person if that's possible, her advanced contrology certificate. So yes. Every 2 years or so I feel like I just need more. Yes. And I do whatever I can fit for or where I'm at then. And that has been amazing for me from a continuing ed and just, to enliven what I think you mentioned burnt out earlier. I don't ever feel really burnt out, but I do feel like I need something. Like I just need something. I need a mentor. So I do that. Yeah, absolutely.
And that was an interesting conversation on Friday night when I was talking with Nicholas about burnout, right? And his response to burnout like 15 years ago, in retrospect, he was like, oh, I probably could have done that differently, right? Like, obviously, we
Right.
could look back
Right.
and
Right.
do it differently. But everything seems so proactive now. People are so much more keen on like self-care. And
Hmm.
I like using the term soul crafting. Like, what are we doing that kind of feeds our soul, sort of thing, right? So,
Hmm.
um, so that being said, I hear that in what you're saying. Like, instead of waiting till you're at that place of burnout, it's like proactively, how can I feed my appetite for more learning, a new challenge, something that I'm not gonna just figure out overnight, but I'm gonna have to chase after, right?
Right, right. Yeah, and again, like this past year with things moving online, I feel like there's so much to choose from. There's actually too much to choose from because sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know
There
which
is,
one I want to do this week.
right? Yeah.
I want that one, but I want this one. And
Mhm.
I've learned that I have to like I can't take all of them. I have to streamline and kind of focus a little bit better.
Yeah.
But yeah, the opportunity to have that to just kind of re-energize, reinvigorate,
Hmm.
re-energize you. And even if it's just one or two things you take away from something that you can then implement, it feels different to the client too. So
Yes,
it's
it does.
helping you and it's helping your clientele develop.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the piece that I think excites me the most. And I have been asking people like who their ideal client was, and I started to rephrase the questions in terms of like, in terms of your learning, who are those people that, no, how can I put it? My learning and the things that I'm learning for my own personal development, I'm thinking about it through two lenses. I'm looking at like, this is what I need in my body, but this is what this person that I train, that I love
Right.
working with, will benefit from it too, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
for
It's
example,
you
yeah, if they have
both
like
parts. Yeah.
scoliosis or something, I'm like, I'll dive deep on every scoliosis workshop so I can learn it, even though I don't have it, so I can teach it to them.
Right. Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? So,
Right.
that's the long-winded way of asking who your ideal client is.
Right, right. And yeah, and I agree that, part of our education is about being able to feel it, to put words to it, to move into it, to be able to find those metaphors or images to go with it. But not all of the things that we go to learn aren't necessarily apply to us. We have to think
Mhm.
about who we're working with and how we take what we learn to that. What phrases work for that client, for those clients, and it's different for every body, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So now, so for you then, like, who is that ideal client? What is like, not even physically what do they look like, but like, who is that person that you would just train for free if they walked into your studio today, sort of thing?
Yeah, my ideal client has definitely evolved over time. I kind of have to say I have two because I do have like my teacher track where I love teaching teachers.
Hmm.
We call them apprentices, but new teachers, teachers moving up, learning. I feel really like a sense of responsibility to pass on my passion for Pilates to teachers and
Yes.
hope that they pass that on too. So that's kind of like one track. But in
Yes.
terms of my clientele one-on-one, at this point, I've really enjoyed working with, and I've even onboarded some new clients only online.
Hmm.
Um, Clients that are, I would say, between 60 and 80 with some, not I want to say rehab needs, but physical needs that have kept them from living their healthiest life, mobility wise, flexibility
Yes.
wise, strength
Right.
wise. So just teaching real, like, fundamental movement that's
Hmm.
healthy and functional, like
Yes.
to go from your car to the store or the laundry downstairs and up. And
Hmm.
so I guess taking it down, I have veered away, especially in this past year, from like that really advanced kind of workout.
Yes.
For me right now, exploring the basics of movement, the functionality of movement, and
Hmm.
how it serves, an aging population also, has
Yes.
been really important. And also, like with COVID, exploring more the breath that I might not have
True.
done before. But like clients that have any more chronic issues, lung issues, or heart issues, and how to explore how just those fundamental movements help with everything. I think I kind of touched that out with you. It's like the body and the mind working together. The body can
Together.
help the mind can help the body. And that's
Yes.
Pilates isn't just about going to your hour class at that big box gym, taking the movements, going through the movements, and then going home. For me, I mean, it might be that for somebody, and that's
Mhm.
fine.
And that's
But
fine.
I
Yeah.
think of it as like a preventive medicine where it's, even if it's only 10 minutes a day and you're doing these movements with a really prescribed way and you're really in that whole zone, so to speak, it's like your healthy medicine from a holistic standpoint. You know what I mean?
Yes. And you know, it's funny because like I did a post this morning about one of my clients, and as much as I love working with guys, I love working with strong guys, whether they're athletes or weekend warriors, whatever. And my client I had this morning is just one of those guys I can just throw in an intermediate workout at him and could just flow with it, knows the words, but then this morning he's like, my back's sore, I've been shoveling all weekend. Just so it's at that point, we had this great workout where it was so slow and it was just like little articulations and small, just a minutia of different movements and stuff. And that was just as fun and just as beneficial for him as when it's like this super sweaty, hardcore, grinded out type of fast paced workout, right? So,
and it's just as whatever we want to call hard in a different sense, in a different way. Maybe mentally it's harder. I don't, you know.
Right.
So, I also enjoy the clients who, again, I think because of my own anxieties and things in the past, I can appreciate those who struggle with that. And so to look at it from that mental health standpoint and how just the movement, that focused breathing, you know, completely focused movement for that period of time that I'm with them makes them clearer or less stressed for the rest of the day. So again, not just looking at it as, you know, my arm is getting stronger, my leg is getting stronger, you know, just not looking at it from that.
No, it's holistic.
Yeah, exactly. So when I think of strength, I don't think of just strength. I want to think of just mentally strong too, to make it through. This is a really stressful time. I mean, you know, we're getting used to it, and this is maybe, I hate to use the term new normal, but maybe that's where we're at, but it's been really stressful getting to this place. So so I think having a strong mind within that mind-body connection is huge.
Right, exactly. The phrase that we're throwing around is like letting the work do the work.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not sure if Kathy's still in here, but Kathy Barker Strack was in the room a minute ago, and she was sharing the story of Tony, Joseph Pilates' barber. And when we were having our conversation, she was talking about how Tony was in the war and had seen death at a young age and that PTSD type thing. So obviously back in that day, they didn't even have a label for it, but they wanted to institutionalize him and all those things. And he was saying that his time with Joseph Pilates, doing Pilates, healed him of that. It got him to a place of being centered and just helping get stronger and those different things. So there's not like we had this clinical study of before and after, but we saw how just doing the work was enough to align him,
transpose that.
Exactly.
I remember hearing that conversation that you guys had, and I think just, you know, when you get on this apparatus, first of all, the routine for me, because I do practice classical authentic Pilates, whatever you want to call it, I'm very routine. So the routine for me is critical, like knowing what to expect, working what I would consider the depth into that routine really focuses me and centers me. I did find that, especially during this pandemic, I felt all over the place. Like, I don't know if you felt that way, but like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, and I haven't done this, and I haven't really accomplished anything. But when I get on my equipment and when I go through my routine, I'm accomplishing something, and I am so focused. Like, I'm doing exactly what I'm being asked from my teacher too. Like, I'm really letting someone else kind of lead me through that process without having to be in charge of everything all the time, you know? So there's something therapeutic, I think, about being able to almost like let that go within that movement and know that structure is there, that focus can be there, that breath that you probably don't take during the day is there. There's so much about that I think when done regularly, it can change your neurons and your chemicals and all of that to heal in whatever way.
And I'm sure you can identify with this from being a group fitness instructor. When I was teaching like a boot camp or Tabata class or something along those lines, I would tell people, we're doing the exact same workout as we did last week. You know, and a lot of times people were expecting you to razzle dazzle them with new exercises every single week. Look what I just found on YouTube. I'm going to try this with you guys today, sort of thing. And I would tell my group, like, we're doing the exact same workout, so you can be able to tell yourself how you feel compared to last week at this point. when we got to those, hamstring glute bridges and the TRX, like, I mean, you got through five of them last week, and this week you got through 8 of them, that sort of thing. So I was like, it made a lot of sense to me when I got into moving into more authentic Pilates, understanding if I'm going through the system and if people are getting familiar with the system and what comes next, then they can ask themselves, how do I feel now at this point?
Right.
Where,
and you can see the gains. You can see the change. It's a subtle change. I think that's hard for some of our clients to accept and work with, like that subtle change can take time, but there really is that change. And maybe 3 months from the beginning, when you point that out to them, it's like, oh yeah, I am able to do that now, and I couldn't do that before. So I appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, there has to be a sense of intentionality with the way that we teach as well, or else people are programmed that they're going to be entertained here like they are in the rest of their life.
Right. And I think, in my 20 years of teaching, that has definitely gotten more exacerbated maybe by, I just think, I mean, when I started teaching, I think I had a flip phone, but like, I didn't have a cell phone that could take videos of myself or do this. So like the demand for like immediate results and immediate everything, and I want it now, I'm going to get it now. That has really changed too, I think, which maybe that's why I gravitate towards the clientele that I gravitate towards right now, because they're still not really, like some, I don't know. But I think that for me, again, the routine is what I don't want to say, relaxes me, calms me, and helps me find my place.
Yes.
And I've been doing my workout in the middle of the day, mainly because that's what worked with my schedule and my instructor schedules and things like that. But it's a great time of day for me to do it, because I can get what I need to done, do my workout, and then be in a really good place for the rest of my day. It just happened to work for me time-wise. Whatever time works for anybody is great. But I do think it puts you in a place that you can then operate from in a different way, maybe.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Emma's just saying social media with a angry face there. I mean, it
has its pros and cons.
It has its pros and cons, and it definitely is dangerous if that's what we're using to gauge success.
Yes. Yeah, it's easy to, I love, I do Leslie Logan's agency program, and she often says, put the blinders on, which I think is really important for us. And I hear those words sometimes when I start to go down that rabbit hole of Instagram. I'm like, okay, Cheryl, put the blinders on. You're doing your thing. You're doing okay. It's going to be okay. But we all, no matter what level of instruction we're at, I think we all can succumb to that.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes, it's hard not to.
Yeah.
So I'm putting my blinders on.
I mean, it's tough for us too, because this is part of, this is our livelihood right now, right? That connection.
Yeah.
So it's just a currency though, and it can be used for good or it can be used for evil. So that's what makes it difficult to find that sweet spot.
I try really hard to steer clear of the threads that get aggressive and just mean. Like there's no place for that in my world, and it happens sometimes. So I'd really like it to just stay positive and know that we're all doing our best. I think that's really what it gets down to. We're all doing our best to make this kind of really odd situation work, and just support each other in that.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know you were doing agency.
Yeah, I started that. Well, I upgraded for Christmas. That was my gift to myself. So I guess I started it maybe back in May or June when Leslie did one of her she did a mini thing. And, I felt like I also, while I love learning about Pilates so much, there's that part of me that also enjoys learning about business. In here we did, I did the 10K which is through Goldman Sachs, I guess it's a year and a half ago. And again, not having a formal business education, that was probably like the closest thing I got. And I love learning about that aspect of my life too. So I felt that the agency was a support system for all levels of instructors, which is also what I liked, like from brand new to, seasoned instructors, some business owners, some at home, some not. And just a place where you could be it's definitely like a safe space to feel like you can bounce ideas and learn some things. And she has these awesome webinars twice a month that, depending on like what your subscription is, what you can watch. But I've learned so much from those webinars. And you can watch them, whenever. So I love it. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, she's a great coach, and I've heard people I've had people on here say that as much as we're Pilates instructors, the best thing that we can do as Pilates instructors for our business is take a workshop on something other than Pilates.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, okay, I think we're pretty good at Pilates, but then if you can learn something else to add to your toolbox, take Olympic lifting, take squats and deadlifts, take marketing and CEO, SEO
Yeah,
management, like something else, and just add
yeah,
that to your toolbox
exactly.
anywhere. That just, it helps us to be that much more well-rounded. So
Yeah, I agree. Because it is easy to kind of get really narrow focused down that path. But
yeah.
yeah, and I've also tried to work on my language skills since I'm taking classes with Anelia, who's in Brazil and speaks Portuguese. She also speaks Spanish, but I've been doing that as a side thing, just for fun.
There you go.
Gotta do something.
Never stop learning, right? Like,
That's right. Yeah, I think did you talk about the Gallup strengths? Is that what you were
yeah, it
mentioning
was
before?
it was one of those inventories. Yeah, I can't remember
So
what
I
it was.
did
Strength
that as
Finders, actually.
part of a class that I was a networking group that I was doing. And it was so interesting because my top ones were like responsibility, which I felt for my team, learner,
Yes.
which I can't stop learning. Like I just want to keep learning.
Mm-hmm.
So it really was pretty accurate, I thought, for,
Yeah.
what
I
I was
think, yeah,
doing.
Gallup is the Strength Finders one, right?
Yeah, that's Strength Finders.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the same one.
So that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. And then that's just it, right? So we flow within those gifts, and the thing I was like thinking about, like for you saying about learning, you're learning this, and then you said languages. I was like, oh, that'd be so hard. But you're like, I love it. I'm adding that to this. I'm like, okay,
I know,
that's your calling. There you
yeah,
go.
exactly. One thing about going back to letting the work do the work, I was just thinking about
Mm-hmm.
this, was that, I think also when I talk about that, it's like, I feel this responsibility when I'm training newer instructors to become instructors. And it's like, there's so much, right, to get at the beginning. I mean, it takes like 3 to 5 years to really get and understand what you're learning, right? I feel like, just from a time standpoint. But it's like, I think about there's those methods of Pilates where they're micromanaging every single thing you do or say, and it's not really flowing. And then there's overdoing, and then there's those that just go so fast that it's like you're just going through the action sometimes, and there's none of that. So it's like, how do you find that balance of letting footwork, every time you do footwork, like being in the moment with that footwork, and letting it calm your mind, calm your body, settle into the mat, lengthen your spine, and how do you let it do its thing? And cue correct, obviously, make sure they're moving with the correct action, and keep them flowing, but don't go to those, try to find that happy middle, try to find that balance, I guess, between the two. It's hard. It's really hard. It takes a lot of experience, I think.
It does.
Just time and practice.
And listening.
Yeah.
Because there are people that are so technical, and they were like, is my toe in the right spot? Is this right? You know what I mean? And then there's other people who just don't care. And I get so excited. Oh, look at that articulation in your spine. Like, whatever. What's the next exercise? Let's
exactly.
Right? So you have to listen to the person that's in front of you too, and find that sweet spot.
Yes. Also, yes. I think that's like an intuitive skill to be able to read. Like I talk about being able to read that person that you're working with, or that class. Are they the people who just, like you said, come in just to zone out and go through do it? Just that's fine. Or are they the people that are like, you didn't correct my knee?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm going to correct your knee. Like, yes. So being able to accurately read, and then within that be like, well, I don't have to correct your knee every single time. How do you educate within that about what we want them to do? Oh, here's Leslie.
There's
hey,
Leslie right there.
I just mentioned you.
We just finished pouring over how awesome agency is. There you go.
You have to go back and watch.
Yeah,
she's on California time, so it's early for her.
I know. This is like 7-8 for them. Exactly. It's so funny though. Like for every client to be able to find that sweet spot is it's for I find it honestly. I think that's fun. I think that as a challenge for me. It's like it's almost like a puzzle. It's a puzzle. Yeah. I'm an athlete. It's a sport.
Yeah.
Let's call it what it is, right? Like, so what is how are we gonna win this game today of getting this person to do what they want to do, what I want them to do, and find that sweet spot where we can actually make progress in between that space, right? So,
yes. Yeah. And keep them moving. Like keep them moving safely.
Yes.
Within the parameters of what we know, how do we balance all that? It's a lot. It's a lot for newer teachers to process all at once. So again, I just always go back to just practice and keep learning and keep observing and keep listening.
Right, right, right. And
with
to
it.
add one more thing for those new teachers who may be watching, just adjust one thing.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
don't make all 97 adjustments that person needs. Like
Right,
just
right.
chase after one or two for this week and be like, that is great. You followed those cues. Next week we
Right,
can layer this in, or even show them what the gold star is for 6 weeks from now,
right.
but just chase after one or two things for right
Yeah,
now.
don't feel like you have to do it all. Like
Right.
it's not all right now in this 1 hour session. It's a, I think to look at it as a process. I mean, we always
Yes.
talk about that in social work, right? It's a
Yeah.
process. This is a long
Process or the
process.
journey, right? Like,
It's a
yeah.
journey, right?
Yeah.
So look at it from that standpoint, and don't feel like you have to be everything all at once, and you have to cue everything all at once. And also to really look at the body that's in front of you. To be,
Yes.
I find that that's a hard thing. Like they're just cueing everything because that's what they've been told to say.
Right.
Like, what does the body that you're working with really need you to say? Yeah, take a step back and just watch
Yeah,
and figure
yeah.
that out, like a puzzle. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, funny, Cheryl, just like I was talking with someone who's not in the personal, like in the Pilates world. Were they even in the, I can't remember who it was I was speaking with, but like in our Pilates speak, we throw that term around like train, like speak, coach to the body in front of you, right? And
Yeah.
how many times a week do you say that line? Like we just throw it around like it's nothing. And I was
Yeah.
talking with, I was talking with someone about this in one of these conversations, and I said, "Oh, you just like trace to the person in front of you," and he was like, "Oh," like he was like, it was like mind blowing for him, like to hear that line. It's like, I say that all the time, but like it's so funny
Yeah.
that we take it for granted and we try and do it to the best of our ability, but that's not
Right.
common speak outside of our Pilates world.
Yeah, you're probably, yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way, but
Yeah.
yeah, or maybe it's heard and it's just kind of in and out one ear, in one and out the other. I don't know, but
Maybe.
yeah, I think, well, I think especially with newer instructors, I think there's so much material to learn. Like they're so
Yep.
caught on the order for my program.
Yep.
The order, the technique, the flow, the action. Like there's so much of
Yes.
that you get lost in the humanity, the humanness of
Absolutely.
it all. Like now
Yep.
you have a real body who can't just be by the book. You have to
Right.
be gray instead of just black and white all the time,
Yes.
and how do you find that safe balance within that? It's
Right.
hard. Yeah.
It is hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
Yeah, there's so much I could go on.
I know. And we're at 58 minutes, so at the same
I
time.
know, it was
so
great to talk to you. I'm so
likewise.
happy I got to meet you. I've been watching and like, oh, I'd love to meet this guy. So
Yeah, this is fun. This has been great. And I love just meeting all these amazing people, and I have an excuse to come to Rhode Island now. So
yes, yeah, it's a pretty cool city actually. Small, but
yeah.
neat when we're out of this, I guess.
Right, exactly. I know.
Yeah.
It's like so much for crossing the border right now. I had to go like see Amy in Alberta.
Yeah, I don't even know if we're allowed. I don't think we're allowed to come visit you. I don't know.
Okay. Virtual
Yeah.
it is.
I
Hey.
guess so. All
right.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
your time.
Thank you. Great chat.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
great to
so
talk to you.
I will send you the replay after, and yeah, we're good to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Martin.
Thank
Bye.
you.